The unsettling smile. The Zorian fleet had traveled for months through the void, preparing for a mission that would ensure their dominance in the galaxy. Their target, Earth. The humans, a young but rapidly growing species, had long been underestimated by the galactic powers. The Zorians had heard stories of their courage, but they dismissed them as mere rumors, exaggerated by the human love for their own legends. Earth's rapid rise in technology and power had caught the attention of many, but no one believed they could truly challenge the established galactic order. The Zorian flagship, Zephyrus, dropped out of hyperspace, its massive hull gleaming in the light of a distant star. The fleet was sleek and imposing, a symbol of Zorian might. At the front of the fleet, in the heart of the Zephyrus, sat Admiral Thalrin, a veteran of countless battles. His eyes narrowed as the sensors detected the first human ship. It was a small vessel compared to the Zorian warships, yet it exuded an air of confidence that unsettled him. "Prepare for communications," Thalrin ordered, his voice steady, but with a hint of unease. The Zorians had arrived to negotiate, or so they thought. Their intelligence suggested that Earth, despite its military prowess, sought peace. They were wrong. The human ship, Eagle's Wrath, was a warship, not a diplomatic envoy. But what made it even more unsettling wasn't just its armament. It was the message they received. A simple, unassuming transmission came through the Zorian ship's comms, and it was a message that no one had prepared for. "Greetings, Admiral Thalrin," came the voice of the human captain. The words were clear, calm, and without hesitation. The voice was warm, even friendly, yet it carried an undertone that made Thalrin's skin prickle. It wasn't just a voice, it was a presence. The captain's confidence oozed from the very words they spoke, almost as if he already knew the outcome of this meeting. "I am Captain Marcus Ward of the Eagle's Wrath. I welcome you to Earth's space, but I regret to inform you that peace is not on the table. You've made a grave mistake by arriving here." Thalrin blinked, his thoughts racing. This wasn't what they had been told to expect. The humans had been supposed to cower, to beg for peace. Instead, they were met with a bold declaration of war. It was not just the words that unsettled him, but the calmness with which they were delivered. It was as if the human captain had already made up his mind. "Is that so?" Thalrin replied, his voice sharp, trying to regain control of the situation. "You would challenge the Zorian Empire. You are gravely mistaken, Captain. You will find no mercy here." Captain Ward's voice remained unchanged, still calm, still precise. "I wouldn't dream of mercy, but I assure you, Admiral, this is not a challenge. It's the inevitable outcome of your arrogance. You've miscalculated, and now it's time for you to face the consequences." There was a slight pause, and then the transmission cut off. Thalrin stared at the blank screen in disbelief. His mind was racing, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. The human captain's words echoed in his mind. "It's the inevitable outcome of your arrogance." What did he mean? How could the humans know anything about arrogance? They were supposed to be weak, easy to intimidate. And yet something about that smile, that simple greeting, made the hairs on the back of Thalrin's neck stand on end. It was a smile. The captain's voice had carried a smile in it, but it wasn't one of kindness or warmth. It was a smile of something else, a smile that told Thalrin, deep down, that this wasn't a peaceful negotiation. This was a warning. "Captain, what do you think of this?" Thalrin asked, turning to his second-in-command, General Darius. Darius had served beside him for years, through many battles. He was a seasoned veteran with an eye for strategy, but even he was taken aback by the audacity of the human captain's message. "I don't know, Admiral," Darius replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "It's not like any communication we've received before. There's something off about it." Thalrin's thoughts swirled. This was unlike anything he had prepared for. The Zorians had always prided themselves on their overwhelming force and tactical superiority. They had crushed many empires before, and they believed that this would be no different. But the humans weren't begging for mercy. They were calmly declaring war. "Prepare the fleet," Thawrin ordered, his voice cold as ice. "If the humans wish to fight, we will give them a fight they will never forget." But even as the order left his mouth, Thawrin couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap. The Zephyrus was an advanced warship, the pride of the Zorian fleet, but the Eagle's Wrath, the human vessel, seemed to be something entirely different. The Zorian sensors began to pick up more human ships emerging from behind a nearby moon, seemingly from nowhere. Their formation was tight and coordinated. These ships weren't just a defensive fleet. They were a war fleet, and they were prepared for something big. The Zorians tried to shake the uneasy feeling creeping up their spines. It was just a small fleet. They were stronger, faster, and more advanced. But then, another transmission came through. The voice was calm, too calm. "Admiral Thawrin," Captain Ward's voice rang out once more. "I trust you are preparing for the inevitable. Don't say I didn't warn you. It's time for you to meet the true power of Earth." And then, the communication cut off again. Thawrin's grip tightened on the armrest of his command chair. The smile was still there, in the back of his mind. The human captain had smiled, but it wasn't a smile of kindness. It was a smile of someone who knew exactly what was coming next. And for the first time, Admiral Thawrin wasn't sure if he was prepared for what the humans had in store. The bridge of the Zephyrus was silent. Every officer stood frozen, eyes locked on the holographic display showing the human fleet. Captain Ward's last words echoed in Admiral Thawrin's mind. "It's time for you to meet the true power of Earth." The Zorian fleet was massive. 10 warships, each the size of a small city, armed with the latest plasma cannons and energy shields. The humans had only 6 ships, smaller, older-looking. Their hulls weren't adorned with the sleek, intimidating armor of Zorian design. The Zorians should have had the advantage. And yet, Thawrin couldn't shake the unease that crawled up his spine. "We should fire immediately," General Darris suggested, his tone sharp. "A warning barrage will remind them of their place." Thawrin hesitated. There was something too calm about the humans, too measured. He didn't believe in gut feelings, but this time, his instincts screamed at him. "This is a mistake." "Sir," one of the officers reported, "the humans are not moving. They're just waiting." Thawrin exhaled sharply, a game of nerves then. Fine. He would play. "All ships," Thawrin ordered, "fire a warning shot." The Zephyrus and its fleet unleashed a storm of plasma fire. Glowing streaks of blue energy streaked toward the human ships, an overwhelming display of power. It was meant to show dominance, to remind the humans who held the real strength here. Except, something was wrong. "Sir," a Zorian officer shouted, "they're not evading." The human ships didn't move. They just sat there, completely still. And then, just as the plasma blasts were about to hit, nothing. The human ships flickered, their images distorting like a glitch in a simulation. And then they vanished. "What? Where did they go?" Thawrin shouted. The Zorian bridge exploded into chaos as officers scrambled to make sense of what just happened. The scanner showed nothing. No wreckage, no explosions, no signs of cloaking. It was as if the entire human fleet had never been there. "Sir," the sensor officer's voice shook. "They're behind us." Thawrin's blood ran cold. The Eagle's Wrath and its fleet hadn't vanished. They had moved at impossible speeds, jumping behind the Zorian formation without a single warning. No known technology allowed that. No empire, no species in the galaxy had ever moved like that. The realization hit Thawrin like a sledgehammer. The humans had been playing them the entire time. "Shields up. Reverse course." Thawrin roared. But it was too late. Captain Ward's voice returned over the comms. "You should have listened, Admiral," he said, his tone disturbingly casual. "Now, it's our turn." The first human torpedoes struck. The Zorian fleet never saw them coming. Admiral Thaurin's heart pounded as the Zephyrus shook violently. The first human torpedoes had struck with devastating precision, bypassing shields as if they weren't even there. The Zorian fleet, so confident in its strength just moments ago, was now in complete disarray. Damage report. Thaurin barked. Shields down to 43%. Minor hull breaches on decks 5 through 7. An officer responded, panic in his voice. Thaurin gritted his teeth. One attack. One attack had crippled their defenses. What kind of weapons are they using? General Darius demanded. Plasma. Kinetic. Radiation-based. The sensor officer's hands trembled as they scanned the readings. I don't know, sir. The torpedoes don't match any known energy signature. It's like they're rewriting physics as they hit. Another impact rocked the ship, sending several officers crashing into their stations. Alarms blared. More damage reports flooded in. The human fleet hadn't fired a single wasted shot. Every impact had struck a critical weak point. They're not just attacking us, Thaurin realized. They're dissecting us. He turned to his navigation officer. Full retreat. Now. But sir, our fleet. Do it. The Zephyrus engines flared as the great warship prepared for an emergency jump. Nearby Zorian vessels attempted to follow, but before they could escape, the humans struck again. The Eagle's Wrath fired a second barrage, this time aimed at the engines of the retreating ships. The precision was surgical. Engines were disabled, not destroyed. The humans wanted them alive. Thaurin's eyes widened as understanding dawned. This wasn't a battle, he whispered. It was a trap. The humans had let them fire first, let them believe they had the upper hand. And now, when the Zorians finally realized the truth, it was too late. A new transmission came through, the screen flickering as Captain Ward appeared once more. His expression remained calm, almost disappointed. Running so soon, Admiral? Ward asked. I expected better. Thaurin clenched his fists. What do you want, human? Ward leaned back in his chair as if he had all the time in the universe. What I want is for you to understand something, Admiral. His voice dropped to an eerie calm. The wars of the past mean nothing anymore. Your fleets, your weapons, your strategies, they're obsolete. He leaned forward, his next words laced with quiet menace. You picked a fight with a species that doesn't lose. Thaurin felt a cold sweat on his skin. Your fleet is dead in the water, Ward continued. We could destroy you all right now, but we won't. Thaurin's claws dug into the command chair. Why? Ward's lips curled into a knowing smile. Because we want you to deliver a message, he said. Tell your leaders that the age of Zorian supremacy is over. Tell them that humanity is watching. Thaurin stared at the screen, his mind racing. If they returned home in disgrace, their own high command would demand explanations, executions, and yet he had no other choice. This was humanity's first true statement to the galaxy, and it had been delivered without mercy. Admiral Thaurin stood before the towering doors of the Zorian High Command chamber, his hands clenched behind his back. He had faced countless battles, conquered entire star systems, but nothing filled him with as much dread as the moment before him now. The guards, clad in ceremonial crimson armor, glared at him as if he were already a condemned man. A sharp, metallic clang echoed through the grand hall as the doors slowly parted. The chamber was massive. Golden banners hung from the ceiling, displaying the might of the Zorian Empire. At the center sat the High Chancellor, Lord Selkar, his reptilian eyes filled with contempt. Step forward, Selkar commanded, his voice laced with restrained fury. Thaurin swallowed hard and obeyed, his boots clicking against the polished obsidian floor. Around the room, other high-ranking officials sneered at him, their expressions a mixture of anger and disgust. Explain yourself, Selkar said. How did an entire Zorian battle fleet fall before a single human warship? Thaurin took a deep breath. The humans were not what we expected. Their weapons bypassed our shields. Their strategy was flawless. They didn't just defeat us. They humiliated us. The chamber erupted in whispers. Some scoffed. Others exchanged wary glances. No one had ever heard a Zorian admiral speak this way. "You ran from a single human warship," spat General Karthos, a hulking figure with a deep scar running down his snout. "Are you telling us the Zorian Empire is weaker than these primitives?" "No, General," Thaurin said firmly. "I am telling you that the humans are stronger than we ever imagined." Selker leaned forward, his sharp claws tapping against the armrest of his throne. "Did they make demands?" Thaurin hesitated. "No, they only gave a warning. The age of Zorian supremacy is over. Humanity is watching." Silence fell over the room. Then Selker let out a low, rumbling growl. "So, the humans think they can dictate terms to us." His voice was calm, but the way his claws dug into the armrest betrayed his rage. General Karthos grinned wickedly. "Then we must remind them who rules this galaxy." "Agreed," said Minister Veltra, her golden eyes burning with fury. "Admiral Thaurin, you have disgraced this empire, but you may redeem yourself." Thaurin looked up cautiously. "How?" Selker stood, his cape billowing behind him. "You will lead the Grand Retaliation Fleet. We will not just destroy the Eagle's wrath. We will wipe out their entire military presence in this sector. Humanity will know its place beneath us." A deep pit formed in Thaurin's stomach. He knew this was a mistake. The humans had already proven they were beyond conventional tactics, but refusing an order from high command meant execution. "I understand, my lord," he said, bowing. "I will not fail." Selker nodded. "You departed once. Make no mistake, Admiral. If you fail again, you will not return." Thaurin saluted, turned on his heel, and marched out of the chamber, his mind racing. The Zorian Empire had just declared total war on humanity, and Thaurin feared they had just sealed their doom. The Zorian Grand Retaliation Fleet cut through the void like an unstoppable storm. Hundreds of warships, each bristling with advanced weaponry, surged toward the last known coordinates of the Eagle's wrath. The Zorian High Command had given a clear order: annihilate the human warship and destroy any human forces in the sector. Admiral Thaurin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, his golden eyes scanning the tactical displays. His fleet had formed an unbreakable wall of firepower. There was no way a single human ship could escape this time. "Admiral, we are approaching the designated coordinates," his second-in-command, Captain Velfar, reported. "But there is no sign of the human vessel." Thaurin narrowed his eyes. "What?" The deep space scanners showed nothing but empty blackness. No planets, no debris, nothing. Something was wrong. "Deploy recon drones," Thaurin ordered. "Scan for cloaked vessels." The drones launched, zipping through the void in all directions. Seconds stretched into minutes, and still there was nothing. The crew shifted uneasily. The tension on the bridge grew thick. Then, "Sir, we're detecting movement at the edge of our sensor range," a lieutenant called out. "Wait, multiple movements, hundreds of them." The display flickered, and suddenly, the void was no longer empty. Blazing into existence like vengeful ghosts, human warships materialized from their stealth formations. Massive dreadnoughts, sleek destroyers, and swarms of smaller attack craft emerged from the darkness, forming a vast and terrifying battle line. Thaurin's stomach twisted into a knot. "It's a trap," he whispered. Before he could react, a message appeared on the fleet-wide communication channel. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of the human captain from before, the one with that unsettling, knowing smile. "Ah, Admiral Thaurin," the human said, his voice calm, almost amused. "I see you brought reinforcements." That was wise. Thaurin felt his claws dig into the armrest of his command chair. "Surrender now, human. You are hopelessly outnumbered." The human only chuckled. "Outnumbered?" He gestured toward the massive fleet behind him. You still don't understand, do you? We knew you were coming. We let you come. Thalren's blood ran cold. Then the human captain gave a single order. Fire. A blinding storm of energy erupted from the human fleet. Gigantic beams of light, high-velocity kinetic rounds, and missile swarms filled the void. The first wave of Zorian warships never even had time to raise their shields before they were torn apart. Explosions rippled through the fleet as entire ships were vaporized in an instant. Return fire. Return fire. Thalren bellowed, but the damage was already done. The Zorian formation was broken before the battle had even begun. The Eagle's wrath moved like a predator through the chaos, its weapons striking with impossible precision. Every attempt to target it failed. Its shields absorbed hits that should have destroyed it, and its countermeasures disrupted every Zorian lock-on. The Grand Retaliation Fleet, the most powerful force the Zorian Empire had ever assembled, was being ripped apart. On the bridge of the Dominion's wrath, Thalren's heart pounded. This can't be happening. But it was. The humans had set the perfect trap, and the Zorians had walked right into it. Admiral Thalren gripped the edges of his command chair as his once mighty fleet crumbled before his eyes. The Zorian Grand Retaliation Fleet, the Empire's most powerful force, was being obliterated. It wasn't just a battle, it was a massacre. Sir, we've lost Iron Fang, Shadow Spear, and Relentless Vengeance, a tactical officer shouted in panic. Our right flank is collapsing. Thalren turned toward the main screen, where the human fleet moved with terrifying precision. Their warships weren't just stronger, they were faster, smarter. Every time the Zorians attempted to reform their battle lines, the humans countered instantly, shredding entire squadrons before they could even react. And at the heart of the carnage was Eagle's wrath. That damned human warship danced through the battlefield like a phantom, impossible to track, impossible to strike. It should have been just another battleship. But it wasn't. It was something more. Thalren's claws dug into the armrest of his chair, opened a direct channel to the human captain. A second later, the main screen flickered, and there he was, the same human captain, calm and collected, his expression unreadable. And there it was again, that infuriating, knowing smile. Ah, Admiral Thalren, the human said smoothly. I was wondering when you'd call. Thalren's jaw clenched. You've made your point, human, but this war is not over. The Zorian Empire will never kneel to your kind. The human leaned forward slightly, his smile widening. Oh, Admiral, kneeling isn't necessary. He gestured toward the battlefield, where the last remnants of the Zorian fleet were being torn apart. But running, that might be your only option. Thalren's mandibles clicked in frustration. A retreat. The mere thought of it was sickening. The Zorian High Command had sent him on this mission with one order: total annihilation of the human warship. And now, here he was, staring at the burning wreckage of his fleet, his proud armada reduced to scattered debris. But staying meant death. Sir, Captain Velther's voice was quiet. We have to go. Now. Thalren's claws trembled. He had never lost a battle before. Never. But this wasn't just a loss. It was a humiliation. And yet, what choice did he have? Signal all surviving ships, Thalren said, his voice a low growl. Initiate emergency retreat. The bridge crew hesitated. They were Zorians. They did not retreat. But then another explosion rocked the flagship, and the reality of the situation became undeniable. Sir, confirming retreat order, Velther said, his voice pained. One by one, the few remaining Zorian warships turned and activated their jump drives, fleeing the battlefield in disgrace. The Dominion's wrath was the last to leave, its hull scarred, its weapons silent. Just before the jump sequence completed, Thalren stole one last look at the human captain. He was still smiling, and that terrified him more than anything else. Admiral Thalren stood before the Grand War Council of the Zorian Empire, his shoulders stiff, his claws clenched behind his back. He had returned not as a victorious war hero, but as a failure. His once mighty fleet was gone, reduced to wreckage floating in the void. The High Chancellor of the Zorian Empire, Supreme Lord Vorthak, glared down at him from the towering seat of power. His crimson eyes burned with fury. The other council members murmured in disbelief, their voices filled with scorn and outrage. "You mean to tell us," Vorthak hissed, his voice cold as death, "that one human warship destroyed our greatest fleet?" Thalrin swallowed hard. "Not just any warship, Supreme Lord. Eagle's Wrath is unlike anything we've ever seen. Its speed, its weapons, its... I do know T-Antexus. Vorthak's fist slammed against the stone table, sending a thunderous echo through the great hall. "I want to know how a single human vessel outmaneuvered and annihilated the pride of our empire." Thalrin hesitated. He had spent days analyzing the battle, replaying every moment, searching for some logical explanation. But there was none. The truth was far worse than anything the Zorians had ever imagined. He took a deep breath. "Supreme Lord, I believe we have severely underestimated the humans." A ripple of disbelief spread through the council chamber. "Ridiculous," one of the generals spat. "They are a minor species, barely a century into interstellar travel. How could they?" "You don't understand," Thalrin interrupted, his voice firm. "The Eagle's Wrath was not fighting like a normal warship. It was anticipating our moves before we even made them. It was as if the ship itself was alive. No matter what strategy we used, no matter how unpredictable we tried to be, it was always one step ahead." Silence fell over the chamber. For the first time, Thalrin saw something in Supreme Lord Vorthak's eyes that he had never seen before. Doubt. The Supreme Lord leaned forward. "And the human captain, what do you know of him?" Thalrin's claws tightened at the memory of that human's face, of that eerie, knowing smile. He was confident, too confident. It was as if he knew how the battle would end before it even started. Thalrin's voice dropped to a whisper. "And I believe, Supreme Lord, that he let us live." The entire room tensed. One of the council members scoffed. "Why would he do that? If they are as powerful as you claim, why not destroy you completely?" Thalrin hesitated. "I don't know." That was the worst part. He didn't know. The Eagle's Wrath could have hunted them down, wiped them out. And yet, it let them retreat. Almost as if. The realization hit Thalrin like a plasma blast to the chest. Almost as if the humans wanted them to warn the Zorian Empire. His blood ran cold. What if the Eagle's Wrath was not an exception? What if it was just the beginning? He took a deep breath and turned back to the Supreme Lord. "I believe the humans are testing us. They didn't destroy us because they wanted us to tell you what we saw. They wanted us to spread fear." Vorthak's face darkened. The chamber grew eerily silent. For the first time in history, the Zorian Empire, the most feared power in the galaxy, was afraid. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. A communications officer rushed into the room, his face pale. "Supreme Lord, we've intercepted a transmission from human space." Vorthak narrowed his eyes. "Play it." The officer activated the holographic display. A single figure appeared on the screen. The human captain. And he was smiling. His voice was calm, almost amused. "To the rulers of the Zorian Empire," he said, "you chose war." The smile widened. "Now, watch what happens next." The transmission ended. A cold silence filled the room. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, outside the grand chamber, alarms began blaring across the capital. Thalrin turned to the Supreme Lord. "They're already here." The war had just begun.